Globalization can be defined as a work convergence process that encompasses very different factors: technological, economical, social, cultural, environmental, and political. Some advantages are, for example, the communication. And if here is one aspect of the globalization because it's more visible. For example, for the technology, we can communicate in real time in any part of the world. Uh, for the social networks, and that permitted the people communicate with other persons in other countries for different ways and for different situations. For example, family, work, for companies, etc. And the social networks helps to, for example, in this moment with the pandemic, the schools study in this moment with social networks. So for this is an advantage, the communication.
Other advantage is the disappearing of economic borders. A symbolism of globalization are the products, because we can consume the same product in different countries of the world.
Other advantage is the language exchange. For example, the social networks permit communicate, but we communicate in any place of the world. That means we need to talk that kind of language in in the country we communicated. Um, the video games, music, cinema, movies, and more and are the more and more global, and especially the language used in the world is the English. Is the language more used in the last decade, and the second place is the Spanish, and that permitted communication and permitted many business. One of disadvantage maybe is the loss of national identity because we have fuse of many cultures. So some countries still use the culture of other countries. For example, in Central America, we using many things of cultural of North America. Example, Thanksgiving, sometimes Halloween, and that it's part of the culture of North America, but it's practicing in other countries like Central America or Latin America. So this country lost some of national identity. For example, Mexico. Mexico, they not celebrate Halloween. They celebrate the Day of Dead, or Dia de Muertos. So they sometimes do a fusion, especially in the city of Frontiers, do a fusion to Halloween to Day of Death. So that is many people considering a loss of like national identity because the national identity is important because it's part of the country. But if we lost that, is how lost a piece of the country. So for that, for some people, that it's a disadvantage. Other disappointment or disadvantage to the people see is the maybe the loss of the language don't use too much. For example, native language or some language don't use too much. For example, Greek, I think, uh, or native language. It's not used because all the people, for example, us, study English, or in other, for example, in USA, you can learn Spanish or French, but not that language. It's for the minimal in the world. Other disappointment is maybe the disemployed in many countries, especially in the developed countries. For what? For example, the call centers. In El Salvador, have many call centers of the operation. It's uh, companies on the United States. Why? Because in El Salvador, the the cost of life is less, so the United States, and maybe for us, it's a good pay, but in the USA is the minimal pay for the work we do in all day. So for a day is more cheap travel to the countries in develop than work in the same country. And that's not only the USA. Many countries like German and Spain, French, uh, use other countries for this kind of works, and or for example manufacturing say some things for consume, and it's more cheap by in other country than in this country. For example, maybe example in the USA in the supermarkets, the fruit, if a national fruit, it's more expensive than a fruit from Latin America. And I think the big disadvantage is the worst administration of capital, because they concentrated in only some countries or certain companies, and that create they create inequality in the people and in the countries too. So in sometimes they create like a less advantage for some countries because they are more rich than others, and the people start to think that too. For example, in the same countries, USA and El Salvador, maybe the people when go to USA think, oh, I have a more money here, but your work is less than El Salvador. For example, I have an aunt. She got to the United States almost 2 years ago, and here work in, I don't remember. I think in a restaurant, but she was the manager of the restaurant. When she got to the United States, she started to work in a house, cleaning a house, and she's happy because she worked a lot of money cleaning house in the USA. But my cousin says, "But mom, you now doing the things of the house, and for that paying." So it's a rich country can pay that or for that, and you believe for you stay in a rich country, you are rich too, and it's not important what is your work, but you want more in than your country. So for that you believe, oh, I here and I have more money for less work or for a minor work. So the people start to believe that. So I think the problem principle of the globalism is the capitalization.
In my opinion, the COVID 19 is a proof of the globalization and the kind of globalization we needed and we have it. Because for this is a global pandemic, we can see if we prepare to these kind of things and help other countries.